on our weekly schedule. It's great to be back on our weekly schedule after all the holiday season. And I'm sorry that starting 8 or 9 minutes late, we had some technical difficulty getting in. But now that we're on, hopefully in the future we won't have these challenges. So welcome everybody. Hope everyone's having a good day. And we're ready to start this week's Torah portion, which is the portion of Noach. It's the second Torah portion in the Torah, and it begins, if you're in the blue Article Chumash, on page 30. So, at the end of last week's Torah portion, we were introduced to Noach. The Torah told us that there was a man by the name of Lemech who had a son, and he named his son Noach. Now, why did he name his son Noach? Now, of course, we know Hebrew names have meaning and significance. So when parents name their children, they name them based on a dream, a hope, a prayer that they want their children to either be like the person they're naming the child after, or a name that represents what they would want that child to possess in terms of character or qualities. So I know a couple that just had a baby, they named the baby Ashira, which means I shall sing, because they're very into joy and happiness, and they want their child to be a happy baby, and your name is your mission statement. The word nishama, which is the soul, is 4 letters, nun, shin, mem, hey. The middle 2 letters of nishama is shem, which means name. So your name carries your essence, like Moshe Rabbeinu was called Moshe because he was drawn from the water. Abraham was called Abraham because he was the father of many nations. And there are many, many examples of this. Now, Lamech has a son. And what does he name him? Noach. Now, what does the word Noach mean? I want to make this a little more interactive. So if anyone knows any answers, just either text it or, put it in the chat box. But what does the word Noach mean? The word Noach was actually in last week's Torah portion, because it says that God created the world in 6 days, and on the 7th day, Shabbat, he rested, Vayanach b'yom hashvi, and he rested on the 7th day. The word Noach means to rest. So when Lemech names his son, he names him Noach. Why? So let's read the verse from last week's Torah portion. He says, may this son be a son who brings Noach, which means he brings rest from the work of our hands and from our labor. What does this mean? So rabbis go on to say that Noah was the one who invented the plow. In last week's Torah portion, we talked about different individuals who invented different things. Noah invented the plow. So now man didn't have to work as hard. They were able to use the plow, which was a very sophisticated form of machinery in those days, to be able to work the fields rather than use their bare hands. So Noah was a person who brought rest through his invention. He was like the Steve Jobs, or whatever you want to call it, of the generation. He came up with this great invention that made life a lot easier for many, many people. So at the end of last week's Torah portion, it says, God saw that the ways of man were wicked. And so what does God do? God decides he's going to destroy the world. However, the last verse said there was one man who found favor in the eyes of God, and that was Noah. It's interesting, the last verse of the portion is 5 words, last week's. Noach found favor in the eyes of God. I'm sorry for the cough. The word Noach, if you change the letters, ches before nun, you have 58. You have Noach backwards is chen. Noach found chen, he found favor. Some of you maybe remember the song by Mir Bistushain, by Mir Hastuchain. You are beautiful in my eyes, you have favor in my eyes. So Noach found favor in the eyes of God. So now we come to the beginning of this week's Torah portion. Now, what does it say? This is the story of a man by the name of Noach. Who is Noach? So the very first verse tells us his credentials. if you introduce somebody, you have to say you have to read their bio. So the Torah gives us an opening verse about the bio of Noach. Noach is tzaddik. Noach was a righteous man. Now notice, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says ish tzaddik. Why didn't you say Noach tzaddik? Noach was a righteous man. Ish tzaddik is a very important lesson. You could be righteous, but at the same time not be an ish, not be a decent person. You be very religious, very pious. King Solomon, the book of Ecclesiastics that we just read on the holiday of Sukkot, says, Al tzadek harbe. Don't be too righteous. Sometimes you're so righteous that you forget to be just a good, decent person in the name of religiosity. So the first thing is ish, as Rav Moshe Feinstein says. He was a good man. Be a good human being, a mensch, as they call it. Ish means a mensch, a good mensch, a fine person. In addition to that, he was also righteous. In addition to that, Tamim Haya, he was perfect. He was complete. And then the verse says, in his generation, he was the only perfectly righteous individual in his generation. And then it says, God walked with Noach. Noach walked with God. Et Elokim et halach Noach. So we're right away introduced to this perfectly righteous individual in his generation who walked with God. Now, there's a lot to be said about this opening verse, but the most famous commentary is Rashi on the famous word in his generation. Why does the Torah emphasize that he was perfect in his generation? And Rashi gives two contrary opinions. One opinion is to say that even in a generation of wicked people, he managed to remain righteous. It's one thing when you have good friends, good community members, good environment, good family. It's easy to be good when everyone around you is doing the right thing. But when everyone around you is wicked, it's so much more difficult. So it's to the credit of Noach that not only was he Ish Tzaddik, a perfectly righteous man, and walked with God, but he even did it in a generation of wicked people. That's one opinion. But the other opinion, Rashi quotes, is that it's actually not a compliment, but it's derogatory about Noach. It's saying, you know why Noach was so righteous? It's like, imagine you have a class and the teacher gives a test and everyone fails. Everyone gets a 50 or a 60. And one kid gets an 80. And you say, he's the best student in the class. So you say, listen, he's in a class with a lot of other weak students. So compared to the students in his class, he's the best student. He's on the honor roll. But had he been in a good class, had he been in a class with what do they call it in public school when you have when you're in a more advanced class, they call it anyone else? Not special. They don't call it special. They call it anyways. When a kid is advanced to a higher track within their grade, on honors program or whatever you want to call it, you say, hey, had he been in the honors program, an 80 wouldn't be anything special because he would be with kids who are getting 90s and 100s. The point is that Noach was only righteous compared to the wicked people in his generation. Had they been in a good generation, like the generation of Abraham that we're going to read about next week, he would have just been an average person. He would have not been anything special. So there's two ways to look at the fact that he was righteous in his generation. To take that thought one step further, by Noach it says he walked with God. By Abraham, who's going to be the next biblical personality, it's going to say, God told Abraham, walk ahead of me, go before me. So rabbis use that to reinforce. Why by Noach does it say he walked alongside God? And by Abraham, it says he went ahead of God. And the answer is, there are those that need to lean on God, meaning that they can't do it on their own. And then Abraham was the individual who was able to go out front, so to speak, on his own and be righteous. So God decides that he's going to destroy the world. He regrets making the world because he sees that the nature of man is wicked. And God instructs Noach to build an ark and to take his family into the ark. And indeed, that's what happens. And God sends a flood. And we all know the rest of the story. Noach takes the animals, the kosher ones, 7 and 7, 2 and 2 of the non-kosher. The ark has 3 floors. The bottom floor is for waste. The middle floor is for the animals. The top floor is for humans. And for 40 days and 40 nights, the rain descends. And by the way, the flood began on the 17th day of this month that we're starting today. Today's Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan. We're going to read this week's Torah portion that on the 17th day, the waters from above and the waters from below. So it wasn't just the rainwater, it was the water from the wells below that opened up and came from below and from above. It's interesting. I just had a meeting with somebody who told me that he's doing something special in his personal life on November 11th. And he said November 11th, he likes it because it's 1-1-1-1. So he's excited to do it on this day. And then he asked me, did anything special happen on a November 11th? I said, well, November 11th is an English date, but I could look up what the Hebrew date is and let you know if anything special happened. And I looked up the Hebrew date and I saw it's the 17th day of Cheshvan. I said, listen, something special did happen, but I don't know how you're going to view it, positive or negative. He said, I'm a positive person. Go ahead and tell me. So I told him, this year, November 11th, every year it's different, is the 17th of Cheshvan, the day that the flood began. And I said, do you see that as positive or negative? And he said, I see that as positive. And the question is why? Is the day that the flood began a good day or a bad day in Jewish history? So on a simple level, it's a bad day. It's the day that God destroyed the world. The world was flooded. That's obviously a bad day. But the truth of the matter is that according to deeper Kabbalistic teachings, it's a good day. And to prove to you that's a good day, why was it that the flood lasted 40 days? Why not 20 days or 30 days or 50 days? What's the significance of the number 40? So we know that 40 is a very special number in Judaism. Take pregnancy. Pregnancy is 40 weeks, which gives birth to life. The Jews were in the desert 40 years before they went into the land of Israel. Moses went up to the heaven to get the Torah for 40 days and 40 nights. The number 40, the Talmud says, till the age of 40, you don't have full wisdom and understanding. When the Jews reached year 40 of the desert, God said, now you have eyes to see, ears to hear, a heart to know. Meaning you could learn something, but till the age of 40, you don't really fully absorb it and comprehend it. You see it, but you don't have eyes to see. You don't have ears to hear. You don't have a heart to feel. And a mind to know. So it takes time to really, for something to truly resonate with you. So 40 is a very special number. So one more example of 40 is a mikvah, which is a body of water that cleanses, where women are obligated to go and men go voluntarily, has to have 40 cubits of water. You see this number 40 over and over in every realm, in every aspect of life. According to Kabbalistic teachings, the Mabul was like a cosmic mikvah that cleansed the whole world. The world was filled with evil and corruption and deceit. And God cleansed the world. So you could look at the beginning of the flood as a tragedy, which is what it was on a simple level. But you're supposed to see it cleansing the world for a new order. Until today, we have Noahide laws, the 7 laws of Noah, which means all the descendants of Noah, which is all of mankind, are obligated to keep these 7 Noahide laws. And if you have the Blue Art Scroll Chumash, the one we use in the synagogue, it will tell you what the 7 Noahide laws are. At the very end, it will point out the prohibition against worshiping other gods, the prohibition against cursing, blasphemy, cursing God's name, the prohibition against murder, the prohibition against sexual immorality like rape or incest, the prohibition against theft, the prohibition against eating a limb of a live animal, ripping off a limb, which is cruelty towards animals. And then one positive commandment, to set up judicial systems, that every society has to have courts of law to practice justice. These are the 7 Noahide laws in this week's Torah portion. That after the flood, God said, okay, all the descendants of Noah should keep these 7 laws, to keep basic morality on earth. Then in next week's Torah portion, we introduce to Abraham, which is specifically the Jewish people. So this is the story of Noah and the story of Abraham. But it all begins with this flood, which cleanses the world. Now, why did God have Noah build an ark? With the 10 plagues, God found many ways to destroy the Egyptians. Why did God do it through a flood and have him build an ark? So rabbis tell us that God wanted all of Noah's neighbors, people in the community and society, to see him building this ark. And then they would say, Noah, what are you doing? And he would say, God told me to build an ark because he's going to flood the world because of the corruption. And warn them that they have a chance to save themselves by changing their ways. So it was a way of God giving an opportunity, as God always does, for man to do teshuvah, to repent before they get punished. Now, famously, Noah did not succeed in persuading anyone. At the end of the day, it's just him, his 3 children, and his wife and their wives, 8 people that go into the ark. And the question is, why couldn't he convince anyone? And this is one of the major contrasts between Noah and Abraham. Abraham went about teaching and inspiring and drawing people closer to God, monotheism. Noah, the criticism Noah gets is that he just was insular. He didn't spread the word. He didn't do enough to persuade others like Abraham did. And that's why he's not the first Jewish leader. He's the father of the Noahide laws, but not of Judaism. Abraham comes along and takes that spot. The question is, why was Noah not more influential, convincing, persuasive in gaining followers who would adhere to the ways of righteousness like he did? And so a rabbi say he was what's known as a tzaddik in a fur coat, a tzaddik in pelts. When you're cold, you could either put on a fur coat or a sweater or a coat, or you could light a fire. You put on a coat, you keep warm, everyone else is still cold. When you light a fire, the whole room is warmed up. So too, you could either warm yourself or warm everyone around you. Noah was righteous for himself, maybe his family, but not beyond that. Abraham is the one who teaches us how to go out and spread the warmth and teach others and inspire others and take responsibility as well for others. That's number one. But an insight that I heard was that, you see, Noah was a man of great acclaim. Why? Because he invented the plow. Everyone loved him. He was a celebrity, so to speak. And there is a commandment to rebuke somebody when they're doing something wrong. But sometimes people don't want to take that role of rebuking somebody because they don't want to lose friends. They want to remain on good terms with everyone. Maybe we've had this experience where we see someone doing something they shouldn't do. On the one hand, we want to talk to them and try to point out what they're doing wrong. But on the other hand, it's like, you know what, he's my friend. I don't want him to be upset at me. Why should I jeopardize my good relationship and my good name and my good standing with this person? Same thing is true with Noah. Noah was a celebrity. Everyone loved him. He invented the plow. So he didn't want to go out of his way to point out to people their wrongdoings, because then he would make enemies. To stand up and speak the truth takes a certain amount of, obviously, compassion and empathy for the person, but also courage to not care about what they're going to say about you, to be more concerned about them than you are about yourself. They may hate, when you're a parent, you tell your kids what they need to hear. What if your kids are going to be upset at you? there's nothing I can do. It's more important that my kids should know the right thing. If they're angry at me for telling it to them, there's nothing I can do, because the priority is not you, it's them. So Noah didn't go out of his way to point out to people the mistakes they were making, and that was part of the reason. One more insight why maybe Noah didn't persuade anyone or convince anyone to change their ways. When the flood came, it says God told Noah, go into the ark, the flood is going to start. But Noah did not go in until the rain started. The verse then says Noah went into the ark because of the rainwater. And Rashi says that Noah was a person of small faith, meaning he really didn't believe that God was going to bring the flood. And because he was of small faith, he waited till the rain actually started before he went in. And perhaps the answer lies there, that when a person doesn't truly believe something themselves, they cannot convince somebody else of it. Because Noah didn't wholeheartedly believe that the flood was going to happen, he obviously couldn't have an impact on others. If you want to impact somebody to do something, you have to believe it 100%. And when they see your conviction and your faith and your belief in what you're saying, then they'll be persuaded to act accordingly. But the Kedushas Levi Zabaditchev takes it one step further. He says, what does it mean that Noah was a man of small faith? How could you say he was a man of small faith? He built an elaborate ark according to God's instructions. How could you accuse him of being of small faith? Says the Kedushas Levi, a very beautiful interpretation, says he was a man of small faith in himself. Not that he had lack of faith in God. He had plenty of faith in God. You see, he was a righteous man. He built an ark, but he had lack of faith in himself. He didn't believe in his ability to stop the flood, to change the course of humanity, to convince other people to change their ways. Sometimes we have faith in God, but we lack faith in ourselves. And therefore we don't act enough because we feel, what difference can I make? Who am I? I'm not important. I don't have that much of an impact. So therefore there's many lessons here. Now, first of all, you have to follow God's word. You have to be righteous. Then you have to have faith in what God tells you to do. But even if you're righteous and you follow what God tells you to do, you also have to have faith in yourself. Now, what does it mean, faith in yourself? Obviously, it doesn't mean egotistical faith. It means I believe that if God put me in a circumstance, he wouldn't put me in that circumstance if I didn't have the power to improve it, to change it for the good. So that's the third idea of Noah not having faith, not that he didn't have faith in God, but he didn't have faith in himself. I just want to point out something, that the ark was, our rabbis tell us, was like the Messianic era. Why? Because one of the prophecies in the Messianic era is the wolf will lie with the lamb. And when you think about the ark, all the animals live together with the humans, different floors, but Noah had to feed them every day, right? And they didn't destroy each other, and they didn't destroy the ark. So we experienced the Messianic era in the ark, or Noah did at least. But here's the point. Why wasn't that the Messianic era? And here's a very fine, nuanced idea. You see, in the ark, there was a utopian, messianic energy that everyone lived in peace and harmony. But it was in the interest of all the inhabitants of the ark, both human and animals. Because if they would have destroyed each other, if they would have destroyed the ark, they would have drowned in the flood with everyone else. So it was in their interest, their common interest, to dwell in peace and harmony for the sake of preserving the ark and not destroying it and being able to be saved from the great flood. That represents one kind of peace. Peace where the wolf and the lamb lie together, but it's because they have mutual self-interest and gain. It's not altruistic for the sake of peace, because they understand it's wrong to be destructive and harm and kill. But because, hey, it's sort of, I hate to use this analogy, but a lot of people are talking about, will Putin use, a nuclear, God forbid, bomb or something against Ukraine? And one of the theories is he won't. Why? Because he can't use it on Ukraine as a neighbor without himself getting killed by it. So it's not that he's a peaceful person, it's that he doesn't want to self-destruct. Sometimes people don't do destructive things, not because they're good, but because it's not in their interest, because they're going to suffer the consequences themselves. So it's peace. At least they're not harming each other, but it's not the true peace. The true peace is in the Messianic era, because then we'll come to a peace amongst nations that will not be based on personal gain or self-interest or mutual, with the Cold War, they said mutual destruction, right? You destroy us, we destroy you, right? Mutual peace is for the sake of the righteousness and the goodness. And that's why while the ark was some form of tranquility and harmony and peace and Messianic era, it wasn't a true Messianic era, because that will only come in. That's why even before Mashiach comes, we have to say to ourselves, it's in our age, even if Mashiach is not here, we're not at the Messianic era where we do it for the purest, altruistic, righteous reasons, but it's in the interest of mankind to live in peace for the sake of getting along with one another, because our lives are better when we don't harm and destroy one another. I want to point out something the Talmud points out. In Hebrew terminology, there's something called nivel peh. Nivel peh, literally nivel is like disgusting, peh is mouth, a disgusting mouth. In English, you would say profanity, okay? It's unfortunate today that sometimes you walk around and you hear people talking and they use profanity. They use what we call curse words. Judaism says we should keep our mouths pure, clean, holy instruments. If you throw out profanity with your mouth, then the next minute you're going to say a prayer to God in shul. You just contaminated your mouth with some curse word, and people throw around words like it's nothing today, because it's become very normal in certain circles to talk that way. And Judaism says, no, keep your mouth sterile, keep it a clean instrument, because speech is a very, very powerful tool and gift that God gave us, and should be used for good things, not negative things. To show you the extent that the Torah goes, we know that every word, every letter, the Torah is precise. The Torah has no extra words or letters. There has to be a reason to write extra words. So when the Torah talks about the clean animals and the unclean animals, so if you take in English, you have the word clean, which is 5 letters. Then you have the word unclean, which is 7 letters. Now in Hebrew, there's no one word that says unclean. There's a word that says tamei. Tamei means contaminated. It's the opposite of clean. So it's like clean or defiled, or clean and contaminated. The word tamei is 3 letters, tet mem aleph. The word tahor is 4 letters. When the Torah describes the kosher animals, it says the animals that are tahorah, clean. It could have easily said, and from the animals that are tamei, which means unclean, contaminated, impure, take 2. But the Torah doesn't even want to use the word tamei, because the word tamei is a negative word. It's saying contaminated. It means more than impure. It means defiled. See, listen to what the Torah says. From the clean animals, take 7 and 7. Umina beiman, from the animals, asher einena tahora. Instead of saying defiled or contaminated, the Torah says, which asher einenu are not tahora clean. And the rabbis in the Talmud say that by using this method, the Torah added 8 extra letters that it could have saved. but it goes out of its way and uses 8 extra letters just not to say that about an animal, not a human being, but an animal, that it's defiled, that it's contaminated. And the lesson the rabbis teach us is always try to speak b'lashon naki, in the most clean language possible. And I'm just going to tell you this. I'm sure I've shared it with you, but I had the privilege of growing up with Lubavitcher Rebbe, being at his addresses for many, many years. And when the Rebbe spoke about life and death, and it was remarkable. There's one example. The Rebbe wouldn't say life and death. He would say life and the opposite of life. He didn't even want to say the word death. He said life and the heipach hachayim, the opposite of life. There's just one example. There are many famous examples. The Rebbe wouldn't call hospitals in Israel Bet Cholim, which means the house for the sick. The Rebbe would say Bet Refuah, the house of healing, rather than the house of the sick. So always using positive language, words. Today we know in the world of marketing that language, messaging, advertising companies spend a lot of time and money coming up with the perfect words to trigger the perfect reaction from the consumers. So in the world of business, we know that the right language makes all the difference. Talk about life and death. Nobody goes and buys death insurance, buy life insurance, right? Because who wants death insurance? Life insurance is something you want. So words make a big difference. And it's not just semantics. It's not just a game. It really has a psychological effect. So surely when we speak to one another, we shouldn't ever use negative, derogatory terms and languages. So, we even say, a lot of examples we could bring. But sometimes we use language which is inappropriate. Like someone says, oh, let him drop that. I don't care. Like you may say, oh, it's just the term, let him drop that. But no, you just said somebody should drop that. Words like that should never come out of your mouth. You know what I mean? Because words matter. Words have an impact spiritually. So we have to be careful with our usage of words. And we see this right here. And the Talmud points it out that the Torah wrote 8 extra letters just to avoid using a negative term about an animal, that it's contaminated, so to speak. Surely when we're speaking about human beings who are created in the image of God. Now, when the Torah talks about the flood, first the Torah says the Geshem, the rain came down. And then it transitions into a flood. Now you may think, well, okay, first the rain, like when a hurricane is coming, it starts raining and then it gets stronger and stronger. And it turns into a hurricane. But that's not by chance. God could have started by sending a flood. So our rabbis say that God never gives up on man. God never loses hope on us. So first God tells Noah, build an ark. Hopefully people will get the message, change their ways. There'll be no need for a flood. Then God says to Noah, go into the ark. And God starts the flood. But how does he start the flood? With rain. Because he was hoping people would say, uh-oh, Noah warned us about the flood. Now the rain is starting. Let's do teshuvah before it's too late and change their ways. And God would call off the whole flood. Rain is a blessing for the world. And God said, instead of a flood, you could have the rain of blessing. But only when men persisted and didn't take the warnings, then the rain intensified until it became a full-fledged flood. And the lesson is, obviously, that God, we just said this in the High Holiday Liturgy, until the day a person dies, God waits for the person to repent. Im Yashuv, if the person repents, even on the day of his death, God accepts them immediately. So God is like a loving parent, always yearning, waiting for that child to return to them, and will always, always accept them back under all circumstances. So therefore, God says, I'll wait. I'll send the rain, hoping that maybe they will, hoping that maybe they will change their ways. I'll tell you a story that it's a little bit of a scholarly story, but it's a very beautiful story about how God never gives up on us. And the story goes like this, that this goes back, 100 years ago, and there was a wealthy guy who was a business person. He would go every year to the marketplace in Leipzig, Poland, and he would buy merchandise. He was a big business person. One year he couldn't go to the marketplace. He wasn't well, so he sent his wife with the money to go buy different merchandise. Long story short, she goes, buys a lot of merchandise, and when it comes to buy it, she opens up her pocketbook, and the money is gone. She sees there's a hole in her pocketbook. The money had fallen out. And this is a big fear in Leipzig with tons of people. She was like, how am I ever going to get my money back? Now, she figured, maybe a Jew found it. I'll put up some signs in the synagogues that I lost this money. What happened? Someone tells her, yeah, this guy in the synagogue told me he found the money. She comes running to the guy. Listen, I heard you found this money. Yeah, I did. Oh, that's wonderful. Could I have it back? He says, no. She says, what do you mean, no? You're a Jew. You found my money. You said you found my money. Why wouldn't you not return it? So in Jewish law, there's a law that says if you lost an object, if it has no identification marks and there's no way to prove it's yours, the owner gives up hope of finding it. So if I lose a $20 bill in Publix, or I lose a $100 bill in West Palm Beach downtown, I say, okay, it's gone, because nobody's going to know it's my $100 bill, and I have no way to prove it's my $100 bill. If I lost my wallet, I'm hopeful. Some guy's going to find my wallet, he's going to open up, he's going to see my name, look me up, and send me an email, or give me a call and let me know he found my wallet. So I don't give up hope. But if I lost a $100 bill or a $50 bill, or even a pack of $100 bills, I'm like, some guy found it, he's going to keep it, because he has no way to know who I am. I have no way to know who he is. So I give up hope. Once I give up hope, I'm no longer the owner, because I've I relinquished my ownership. And therefore, according to Jewish law, you're allowed to keep it. So according to the strict letter of the law, that doesn't mean you shouldn't go above and beyond the law, but I'm just letting you know the Jewish law. If you're walking today on the street and you see a $100 bill or any other amount, a dollar bill, according to Jewish law, you could put it in your pocket and keep it. Now, the better thing to do is give it to charity, so at least the person gets the mitzvah of charity. But legally and technically, you're allowed to keep it. Why? Because there's no way for you to know. And here's the point. Even if someone says, listen to this. Let's say I find the $20 bill, and it says John Smith, and has a telephone number, 561-432-6247. According to Jewish law, do I have to call that number and say, hey, Mr. John Smith, I found your $20 bill? Guess what the answer is? No. You know why? Because when I buy a watch, I keep my watch. So if it has my name on it, it's my watch. But money, the whole nature of money is you're always changing hands. I go to the store, someone gives me change. Then I go to the next store, I pay for something else. The same $20 bill could belong to 10 different people over the course of one day, as it keeps on exchanging hands. But just because John Smith wrote his name and number on it, that could have been 2 weeks ago. Since then, there could have been 100 different owners of that $20 bill. So just because that's his name and number doesn't mean it's his. So according to the legal law, money is something you can keep. So when this woman comes to this guy, I heard you found my money, give it to me. He says, no. He says, what do you mean? He says, Jewish law says if you lose money, the owner gives up hope, because they know there's no way to prove it's their money, and therefore becomes ownerless, and the one who picks it up can keep it. So according to the law, I'm not obligated to give it back to you. She said, that's crazy. Let's go to the rabbi. The rabbi at the time was, I think his name was Rabbi Spector. They both presented their case, and the rabbi ruled he has to give her the money, according to the law, not above and beyond. And he said, what do you mean? It's a very famous law that if you find money, you're allowed to keep it, because the owner gives up hope. And listen to what the brilliant rabbi said. The rabbi said, this money was not her money, it was her husband's. He gave it to her. He's back home. He didn't come to the Fear and Lifestick. He doesn't need. There was no WhatsApp and emails and text that she could text him. Oh, I lost the money. He's back at home. He doesn't even know it was lost. So the owner never gave up hope. She may have given up hope, but she's not the owner. He's the owner. And therefore, when you found it, the owner had not abandoned hope and therefore not relinquished ownership. And therefore, you have no right to keep it. And therefore, in this case, you have to give it back to her. And that was the ruling, and you have to give it back to her. But what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is God gives us a life, gives us a soul. And sometimes we give up hope on ourselves. But our owner, meaning the one who created us, the one who put us here, the one who sent us here, like the husband who sent the wife, he never gives up hope on us. He never abandons faith in us. And therefore, even if we give up hope, hope is never, ever lost. So this is the idea that God is waiting, even as the rain starts, hoping and praying that the people will change their ways and return to the proper course. Let's move on to the little further in the story, which is the end of the flood and how Noach goes out of the ark. And here we find something unfortunate. Remember in the beginning of the Parsha, it said that Noach was the Ish Tzaddik, a righteous man. But when God tells him to go out of the ark, God tells him, okay, go out, be fruitful, multiply, just like he told Adam and Eve, rebuild the world. And Noach brings sacrifices to God, which is beautiful, to thank God for his survival. But then what does he do? God promises he'll never bring a flood. He gives the rainbow as the sign in heaven. But then what does Noach do? The first thing he does is he plants a vineyard, drinks from the fruit of the grapes, and gets drunk. And as a result of that, the Torah describes him laying naked in the tent. One of his kids goes in and tells the other brothers, Daddy is passed out naked in the tent. The other kids take a blanket backwards, cover their father to not see his shame. When he wakes up from his hangover, he curses the son who saw him naked and told the other brothers, and blesses the two kids who treated him with respect and covered him in his nakedness and his shame. Now, besides the obvious lesson is that if somebody is in a disgraced position, if somebody is in a compromised situation, if somebody is like Noah, passed out drunk and naked in the tent, don't publicize it for sensational reasons. And all you have to think of is today's media, right? Somebody finds themselves in an embarrassing situation, the media runs to report it, to sell newspapers, to send pictures, to show everybody how this person is suffering or this person made a fool out of themselves for entertainment purposes. We should be like the two good sons, Shem and Yafes, who not only covered their father, but walked into the tent. The Torah says they put the blanket on their shoulders, walked in backwards, covered their father, left the tent, and they never saw their father naked. They did it in such a way that they preserved his dignity. So even when you have to help somebody, don't look more than necessary at their shame, at their vulnerability, at their embarrassment. But look what happens to Noah. Noah starts off as a righteous man. And at the end of the story, he's drunk and passed out naked in the tent. And the rabbis say his mistake was that he should have planted wheat to feed the world, not a vineyard to have wine and get drunk. Now, you may say, well, if you came out of an ark and you saw the whole world destroyed, you would also want to numb your pain and drink alcohol to not have to deal with the trauma and the turmoil all around you of the destruction. When you look at the pictures in Ukraine, you see the destruction, or, like, how do you cope with all that destruction? The whole world was destroyed. But at the end of the day, Noah falls from his high plateau of being a righteous man. And as a result of that, yet another reason why he doesn't become the father of Judaism. It's only Abraham at the end of the Parsha that becomes the father of Judaism. The patriarch of our nation. So Noach doesn't have the ability to rehabilitate himself, rehabilitate the world from the destruction. And I just want to take a moment here, because I think our generation deserves a lot of credit. When you think about the Holocaust, never before in Jewish history, and we've had a lot of tragedies in our long history, but never has there been such a tragedy like the Holocaust, where 6 million Jews were murdered within a few years. Never. But to the remarkable credit of that generation who survived the concentration camps, the Holocaust, we have witnessed before our very eyes the opposite of the story of Noach. That literally the Holocaust ended in 1945, and 3 years later, the state of Israel was established. The rebuilding of the Jewish people from the worst calamity, the worst horrors, the worst atrocities imaginable, where survivors left the camps alone, their whole family. I mean, could you imagine? Can't imagine. They lost their mothers, their fathers, their brothers, their sisters, their grandparents. And these Jews who you would say, like Noah, they would just say, I give up. I'm just going to get into bed and never get out of bed for the rest of my life. I'm just going to be depressed for the rest of my life. And if they did that, you can't blame them, just like you really can't blame Noah. How do you emerge from such destruction and rebuild? You want to give up. You want to surrender to defeat. But the courage, the faith, the vision, the fortitude that generation had. And Israel, of course, is the greatest example. But it's not just in Israel. It's around the world. Jewish life is being rebuilt. It started after the Holocaust, but it's happening in Germany. It's happening in all around the world. Jewish life is coming back. And when I say we, it's not me, but the generation before us, the actual survivors, my grandparents' generation, that came out of the camps, came out of the worst horrors. And what did they do? They started life over again. They got married. They had children. They had grandchildren. They built families. If you talk to people who were raised, children who were raised in the 50s and 60s in Jewish communities, like where I come from in Brooklyn, and I've spoken to many people like this, they'll tell you that there was no such thing as grandparents' day at the school, because there was maybe one kid in the class who had a grandparent. The vast majority of the kids didn't have grandparents. Their parents survived, came to America, had children, but these kids had no grandparents. So my mother, her father and mother, my grandparents, met in the DP camp, got married, had 2 daughters, my mom and my aunt, but they never met their grandparents. Today we think it's a normal thing. Yeah, kids have grandparents, but not the generation that left the Holocaust. So the miracle, but it's not just the miracle. It goes back to what we were saying, that Noah had little faith. He had little faith going into the ark to persuade people to change, and he had little faith leaving the ark that he could rebuild a shattered, destroyed world. So the story of Noah, on the one hand, Noah saves humanity. If not for Noah, maybe we wouldn't be here. God would have just given up on all of us. But God saw one righteous man and said, okay, we could have continuity through him. But at the same time, he doesn't quite, make the mark of being a true giant, a true leader. And makes us pause and think about our generation, how many courageous people there were Jews who left the concentration camp, came to Palestine, and they were told, okay, take a gun and go fight in the Haganah, go fight in the War of Independence, go fight in the IDF. Some of them tragically died in the War of Independence. So they survived the camps to die in the War of Independence. But the courage to do that, to say, you know what, I'm going to start all over. I'm going to build again. We have a future as Jewish people. We're never going to give up on that future. That's the miracle of our generation. And the truth is, it's for all of us. It's not just for that generation, because someone once asked Lubavitch Rabbi, what's the answer to the Holocaust? Why did God allow it? The Rabbi said there's no answer, because there's nothing we could explain that would make any sense why God would allow something like that. Unless what Elie Wiesel said. Someone said to Elie Wiesel, do you have faith in God? He said, yeah. He said, how do you have faith in God after the Holocaust? He says, faith in God is easy. He says, God didn't build the concentration camps and the gas chambers and the crematoriums. The question is, how can I have faith in mankind after I witnessed the evil that man is capable of perpetrating? But the Rebbe said there's no answer to the Holocaust, but there is a response to the Holocaust. And the response is that if 6 million Jews, 1/3 of the Jewish people, were wiped out, that means that every living Jew after the Holocaust has an obligation to add 50% more Jewish activity in their lives to try to fill that void that was taken from the Jewish nation, to compensate for their lives. You can never compensate for their lives, but to act on their behalf. So all of us till today have an obligation to be more Jewish, to engage in more Jewish activities, to promote Jewish causes, to stand up for Jewish causes, to create families, to do all the things to try to rebuild, because this process of rebuilding is going to take many, many generations and will never be completed. So this is some of the amazing insights to the story of Noach. If you have any comments, I see God performs miracles for the survivors, truly blessed by God. Absolutely. That's absolutely true. Thank you for the greeting from Rabbi Moshe Drela. Please send it back. If anyone has any questions, you could put it up right now. I'll try to answer them. If not, we look forward to seeing everyone this Shabbat for the wonderful Torah portion of Noach. And like I said, it is a sad story, but there is, like I said, a cleansing and a new beginning and a very vital lesson. You know, every story in the Torah is a story that happened, but it's also metaphorical. It's a story that teaches us lessons. When you feel the rushing waters, the raging waters of life, you know the expression, I'm trying to stay afloat, trying to keep my head above water. I feel like I'm treading water. You have all these expressions about people feeling overwhelmed. I feel like I'm drowning in work. We use that expression, that metaphor of drowning. The raging waters represents the pressures of life, the demands, the stresses, the anxieties of life. Building an ark means creating a space in your life that you can find peace and tranquility. Everyone has to build an ark. Synagogue is an ark. Torah study is an ark. Right now, we just went into the ark for 1 hour to study Torah. Now, many of you will go back out of the ark to work or whatever you're doing. But for 1 hour, you had a respite. You had a place that was like a cocoon, a spiritual cocoon to study Torah, and find an ark to protect us from all the negative or stressful or demanding pressures. And then we rejuvenate and we go back out with more strength. Shabbat is an ark every week to find a place of space, of comfort, of strength, of spirituality, connection with God, with others. So that's the message of the ark. It's a metaphor. We all have to build arks in our lives. And it doesn't have to be grandiose. You could be opening a Jewish book for 5 minutes in the middle of the workday to learn one thing. And that little thought of Torah becomes an ark to protect you from all the raging floodwaters around us. Have a beautiful day, everyone. And thank you all for joining. I look forward to seeing you next week. All the best.